Isaiah, do the intro.
Wait, this is actually the intro of the video?
I just wanted to see how loud you're
Hey
gonna
guys,
talk.
today we're going to teach you guys how to grow
Okay,
big
here we go.
hamstrings.
Is that what we're doing?
We want your hamstrings to pop out like they're biceps,
right,
which
I'm
is
sitting in the middle.
coincidental because you do have a hamstring biceps muscle. Pretty cool stuff. But does it help you jump higher? Does success really
You shouldn't
leave
say
clues?
anything today, Isaiah.
I'm actually ready to intro the video.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Do you want to do the intro?
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, action.
Are the hamstrings the reason I can jump 50.5 inches? Find out today in today's episode of the THP Strength podcast. But before we get into that, I want to give a quick shout out to our lovely sponsors over at THPstrength.com. If you want to jump higher, specifically, if you're not a bitch, and by not a bitch, I mean you like to train hard and you're not going to quit after a month, and you truly love jumping, right? You go to sleep and that's all you can think about. You wake up and you're excited, not because of life, but because you get to have a dunk session today. If that's you, go sign up. Specifically, I don't want to train you if you just saw some video of somebody jumping high and now you want to jump high and it's just a fad and you're going to give up after a week. No, that's not who we want. So if that's you, go to THPstrength.com. You'll get coached by us.
Hey, Isaiah,
Yes, Austin.
you know what we should do?
What is that?
We should give them a discount.
No way. I don't know. It's already at a big discount.
Oh, it really is.
Actually, yeah.
So if you are not a bitch, if you do want to train, it doesn't matter if your mom calls you a bitch. If you are not a bitch, feel free to sign up at THPstrength.com with coupon code THP for 10% off your first month. If
Does
you
your
are
mom
weary.
call you a bitch?
She has called me many things of that nature.
Okay.
Out of love. Out of love.
All right, perfect. Getting into the topic today, we're talking about your big old booty and how that plays a role.
Your hammies.
I lied. We're talking about your hamstrings and how that helps you jump higher. So I'm John Evans. I'm the coach. I'm the high performance coach here at THP Strength. I do know the topic today. This is Isaiah Rivera. He's delusional as hell. His daughter was up crying all night. This is Austin Burke.
I'm on 2 hours of sleep.
He has a 50.5-inch vertical. He's going to test 51 this summer. I can almost guarantee it. And Austin Burke has a 47-inch vertical in his
I
prime.
love when you put pressure on me.
Just climbing up the ranks.
You know what John told us before me and Austin's last session? He said if we don't kill it, he's not coming to another dunk session.
I
again.
said, and I quote, I said, if you guys don't kill this, I'm never driving to Golden Run again. The hellacious drive that is, I was like, I refuse. But hellacious, yeah, that's the word I want to use. Anyways, getting into it, let's go through our experiences because there's a lot of bullshit on the internet about the hamstring and how it helps so much with being a better athlete and all this different shit. Okay, so quickly before I even get into that, the hamstring is a multi-joint muscle. There are 3 main knee flexors that we are talking about. So we're looking at semitendinosus, semimembranosus, and the biceps femoris. So the semitendinosus and semimembranosus are on the inside of your leg, the medial side. So Isaiah, if you could turn around and show your hamstring.
Do it
all right?
audio.
Do it, yeah. So this tendon, wait a second, I can't find your, oh, there we go. All right, so we have semitendinosus, semimembranosus over here on this side, and then this is his biceps femoris. Those are the 3 main, you can sit down now.
I totally pointed at the wrong.
That's okay.
John, he's like this.
I had to palpate and find it, and then I found it. I had to find the tendon on the lateral.
What's
on the
palpate mean?
Yeah, I know you do. Palpate means to touch. So I had to touch the right spot for me to talk about. But anyways, we see all the time on the internet people talk about how Nordic hamstring curls are the key to being a better athlete and a freak athlete, and anyone can be world class, and it's just how many Nordic hamstring curls you can do. That's a bunch of bullshit. All right, the hamstring functions at the knee to flex. Basically, it flexes your knee. So it flexes the leg, it moves it into this position. That is what it does. The only time you really are using knee flexion in an athletic movement is your repositioning. So in running, for example, at least specifically when it comes to knee flexion, which is what you train when you do Nordic hamstring curls, yeah, it repositions the leg. So after you push off, Isaiah, do the push off. So do it on the bench here. So he's pushing. This is all triple extension. And then when he repositions off the ground, this is the hamstring working. Yeah. So pushes back behind him. Now the hamstring's working. He repositions. And then it extends like this. It's eccentrically working. Then he strikes the ground again. Now it's back to the triple extensors. How fast you run is determined by your extensors, not your flexors. I'm going to say that again. How fast you run is determined by your extensors, not your flexors. So this muscle is a flexor, i.e. it is not that important when it comes to repelling you. That said, the hamstring is what we call a multi-joint muscle, meaning it crosses 2 joints. So Isaiah, turn around again. as my anatomy model. Stand up. So we have the hamstring crosses, the tendon crosses the joint right here. And we have, like I said, the two over here. Wow, your tendons are so stiff. This is crazy. Oh, wow. Look at that. All right, so. Oh, wow. All right, so we have two tendons here, and then we have one tendon here, like I said. So it also crosses his hip over here. Yeah, so straighten your leg completely. So if he straightens his leg completely and he drives his heel back into the bench, his hamstring is contracting because it crosses the hip joint up here. So it also functions in extending the hip. That said, you can sit down now. You don't.
Sit.
I'm going to put the thumbnails you grab in my ass.
Yeah, you should do that.
Outdated.
In Nordic hamstring curls, your pelvis is in a neutral position and you're strengthening it in extension. So you're basically doing an eccentric action. The knee is extending. The muscle is lengthening, and it's an eccentric action. I'm going to say that again. When you do a Nordic hamstring curl, you're strengthening the down phase. That's the point of it. Even if you can lift on the up phase, that's not the point of the exercise, but even if you could do that, it's still strengthening the hamstring in knee flexion, which, like I said, is when you stand up again, Isaiah, demonstrate repositioning the leg. So you're up, knee up position. You've got this knee up position, and it's repositioning in front of the body. So he pushes off. The hamstring's working here to reposition, pushing off, hamstring working in flexion to reposition, etc. That said, hamstring muscle. Go through exercises, your anecdotes, guys, strengthening your hamstring, what you've noticed, what issues you've seen come up, what's your experience with, let's say specifically Nordic hamstring curls and knee flexion-based exercises.
I've always trained the hamstring mainly with RDLs and leg curls and Nordic hamstring curls. And honestly, I've always thought of it as I need to train it, like the posterior chain equally as much as the quads.
What's the posterior chain?
Hamstrings, hips. That's what I see the posterior chain as. So I try to do as much volume basically as I did of knee extension with my posterior chain.
Would you say that you load as much flexion, like knee flexion, as extension? Since I've coached you, do you think that I equate those, or it's slightly off, or what do you think?
It feels pretty equal. Like I would say normally it's 1 day, 1 or 2 days of one or the other, alternate.
And you're saying specifically posterior
I think
chain,
actually
so
there's
glute?
there's actually more hip extension because we do a pulls from the floor. So think of a RDL or a clean or a deadlift.
And then you're going to get the posterior chain squatting.
But normally if we're doing a lot of pulls from the floor, we'll do hamstring curls or Nordic hamstring curls later in the workout.
Here's another good question for you. What is the hamstring's role in squatting? Oh, that's a hard one. Do you know the answer to this?
Are you CJ?
Okay, yeah, fair. He said, are you CJ? Because CJ co-contracts, meaning the muscle contracts on both sides. So it makes extending the knee more difficult. And CJ's every muscle contracts when he squats. He can be at 155, and it's very difficult for him.
I'm actually not sure.
All right, so do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Do you know the answer?
No.
All right, so when you squat, the hamstring is functioning kind of interestingly. On the, Isaiah, you can stand up and be my model again.
Stand.
Which way you want me to?
To move, you can back up a little bit, stand behind the thing. And I want you to face sideways. So as Isaiah squats down, remember it crosses the hip joint, so it's lengthening here, and we're actually shortening the hamstring here. So it can function go ahead, on the up phase. So during the up phase, the hamstring is functioning at the hip, it's shortening, while it's lengthening here. So some people will say that it functions isometrically or kind of isometrically. I don't know if we could definitively say, how the muscle is contracting in that scenario, but because I don't even know if it's possible for the fascicles to half, to half contract. It's probably functioning kind of as a co-contractor or a synergist, meaning it's probably assisting in some ways. A synergist is a muscle that's assisting in the primary movement, which in this case is squatting, but it's not necessarily a prime mover, right? Like a single joint muscle, like the glutes in that scenario, those are going to be functioning purely as an agonist in the extension. Or if we look at the vastus lateralis, medialis, and intermedius, those are single joint muscles crossing the knee during the up phase that are going to be functioning as agonists, meaning the prime mover. That is their sole role in that action. So probably as a synergist. That said, I guarantee during squats, the activity of the hamstring is fairly high. Probably at different points in the squat, you're going to see different activity levels. I don't have that study off the top of my head, but if you're watching this and you did a quick Google Scholar research and looked at peer-reviewed evidence from 2012 forward, let us know and maybe cite those research articles for us. But yeah, okay. What is your experience, Austin, training the hamstring, whether it's sprints or maybe RDLs or whatever else, and what have you noticed in your 1 foot jumping?
Okay, so 1 foot specifically, I do notice improvements with RDLs and sprinting. Never have I noticed it with Nordics. I can't even do a full Nordic.
Neither can I, neither can Isaiah. Success leaves clues. If you can't do a Nordic, you'll have over a 40-inch vertical.
Yeah, apparently.
Or 50.
But I didn't start loading my hamstrings like more than, I don't know, I never really pushed with doing RDLs or anything until around 2022, and that's when my vertical skyrocketed up 2 foot, or off 1 foot, not 2 foot.
So you'd say that RDLs helped you
with 1 foot.
with 1 foot.
With,
Yeah.
with 1 foot specifically, I would not say
Why do you
for
think
2
that
foot.
is?
I mean, that's one of the main loading muscles for 1 foot.
Right. So if you look at what he's saying, Isaiah, stand up again.
Stand. Work it. Twist.
It's like a zoo.
I like being the model.
All right. So if you're doing an RDL, this also works the hamstring, but it doesn't do it in knee flexion. What it does is it works the hip. So what's happening is at the knee, your hamstring is lengthened, right? And then as you stand or as you extend the hip, right, and go, you just do reps of this. So on the way down, hamstring's lengthening, you'll feel a stretch in the hamstring, and then he comes back up. So this is the concentric action, the muscle is shortening, and it's shortening at the hip. So what's actually being trained here mostly is the hamstring at the hip. So it's lengthening on the down phase. As he comes down, it's lengthening, and now the hamstring is functioning to concentrically shorten, so go head up. But we're also working the hip, the glute muscles. So we're working all of your butt muscles, and we're also working the hamstring here. Now, when you jump off 1 foot, that's a similar action. So if he's planting on the ground, Isaiah, you can actually stand here. So as he comes to do a cross,
on the bench?
if you can, yeah, I guess. Oh, yeah. All right, so step over here. So as he plants in this position, what's happening is the hamstring is lengthened, right? We see it lengthened at the hip. It's lengthened at the knee. And then he's going to roll down into that kind of mid-support position. The knee bends. So the hamstring is functioning again as a synergist, probably in this position. And then he pushes off. So it functions interestingly in this because you don't actively pull, right? You're not actively flexing when you're on the ground. It's more stabilizing the knee. It's doing something called co-contracting. Again, this is where the muscle contracts on both sides, and this lets the quad function more optimally and also stabilizes the joint. So the reason that oftentimes we see our 1 foot jumpers do really well when they get their RDL really high is because their hip is getting a lot stronger. They're getting better eccentrically, or maybe functioning as a co-contractor in 1 foot jumping, which stabilizes the knee joint, and then they see their performance go up. I also have seen this, like Austin said. I've noticed my RDL does decently correlate with 1 foot jumping. Go
I
ahead.
also have one anecdote is when my RDL was at its strongest, this was around like January, February, my power clean was also at its highest.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's your hamstrings that get stronger?
I don't think it was necessarily the hamstrings. I think it was just that motion, that
Like posterior
movement pattern, like that of hinging. Like I was able to handle a lot of weight because when you're at the bottom of at the end of the first pull, so like when you're here on the power clean, right before you do that, like this position was really freaking strong.
Yeah,
and
so
I
the
could
bar,
just accelerate
and that's
from there.
almost like a weaker position, right? You're like hinged over. Your low back has to be really strong.
Yeah.
Your hips have to be really strong. So you have to be able to, you have to have a stiff chassis to be able to put the force down, right?
It honestly felt more like my core and
That's what
lower
I'm
back
saying.
was
Yeah.
strong as hell,
That's
more
what I
so
was
than
gonna
the
say.
hamstrings being strong.
I don't think it's like your hamstring as much. It's that to be in that position in RDL, your back, your spine
That
has
position,
to be so rigid.
it's a system. It's like that whole position itself was strong as hell.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think for 1 foot, it's related, right? It's that, but a more truncated, smaller range of motion. So I do think it's super important. Go ahead, Austin, what you were going to say.
I was gonna say. So would you say for 2 foot, doing hamstring work indirectly increases your vertical because it helps with the other lifts?
I think that's part of it. I think that I don't like to leave any stones unturned. And obviously, like I said, the hamstring is a multi-joint muscle. So it crosses the hip. Even though it crosses the knee in flexion, it still crosses the hip. So it's involved in extension. And I mean, I wouldn't even necessarily say a lot of the time train muscles. I train movements. And so I'm not looking at like what muscles are used in these like this specific movement. It's like what movements are going to train those muscles,
Gotcha.
and what movements are going to have higher levels of specificity, either neurally or in terms of the muscle and joint actions and tendon actions. That's how I select different exercises.
I have a question too. Is there, because earlier I was saying I try to have as much posterior chain work as like knee extension work. Does that play a role in health, like in staying healthy? Like should it be balanced?
If my knees hurt, is the reason my knees hurt because my hamstrings are weak?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I think this is a big misconception.
And is there anything to say about imbalances? Like,
Yeah. So there is very little research when it comes to quote unquote imbalances. I think a lot of people are like, oh, we see the hamstring to quad, like hamstring strength to quad strength ratios are totally different, and we need to make these equal to have like a perfect system. I don't think that's necessarily validated. You know, I don't like to use the word that's proven because that's not what you would say in science. Nothing's proven, it's only highly supported. There is some support in research that you could look at that would say that you need these levels of balance in like extreme scenarios where you have an ACL tear or something like that. There does seem to be a relationship between the quad strength and hamstring strength, but I don't think that that's usually the driver of issues. I would say there's far bigger determining factors of whether you're going to get hurt or not. Like if you're a female soccer player and you're on your menstrual cycle, your ligaments soften because of the hormones upregulating. A lot of the time you see ACL tears like crazy in women's soccer. Why do we see it way more in women's soccer than men's soccer? Because a lot of the time their ligaments soften and then they're at a higher risk. They're at a higher predisposition to have a tear in a non-contact injury, meaning like on a cut or on defense. The second thing is reacting to a movement. That's also a massive predictor of whether you're going to tear your ACL or not, is how well you can anticipate someone else's movement in non-contact injuries, right? The third, and what that does is every other risk factor goes crazy high, skyrockets, right? The coordination of which muscles are turning off and on, and the quad being super active when the hamstring isn't, and then moving into knee valgus, and then all of a sudden you tear your ACL. Those risk factors go up like crazy when you add in a human reacting to a stimulus, right? So reaction time is something that they're studying right now with ACL tears.
And then fatigue too, right? Fatigue is another variable.
Yeah, so fatigue also plays a bigger role, right? You could have the strongest hamstring in the world, but if it's super fatigued, maybe that plays a role in that coordination level. So even if in this perfect system where I put you on a leg extension or leg curl machine and you get exactly the same numbers on a single leg test, that might not even matter. You still could be at a really high risk of tearing your ACL. So I think that we have a lot of presumptions or assumptions about that and what it means, but I don't think it is a driver of, whether or not you're going to, I don't think it's a predictor. I don't think it's a good predictor of whether you're going to tear your ACL or not. I think there's far stronger indicators of your risk for an ACL tear. Now that said, when it comes to tendons, pardon my language, can I say the F word? Freaking.
Yeah. Like 3 times.
I'll only say freaking. Freaking ridiculous. Not true at all. I don't think there's any evidence that indicates that hamstring strength is a strong indicator for PFP, chondromalacia, or patella tendinopathy. That's not why I do hamstring exercises. I do hamstring exercises because in sprinters, for example, I need to have the hamstring really strong as a co-contractor so that when your leg unfolds, your hamstring doesn't pull. I do it because I don't like to leave any stones unturned in 2-foot jumpers. As a 2-foot jumper, when you kick out during the penultimate step, you might be able to get a stretch shortening cycle that happens, and it functions as a co-contractor, so the quad can work more optimally. It's not like muscles work in isolation. That's why I always say I train movements. So I still train it. There's a lot of things that I do in their programming. How many times a week would you guys say I load the hamstring heavy? And then how many times a year do you think I really load, like less than 3 or 5 reps in the hamstring?
Heavy. I mean, we train them about 3 times a week. 2 of those days are higher intensities relative to the third day. But it won't usually be super high intensity. Like I would say the most common rep range is like 6 to 10, and we go at like RPE like 6 probably.
Yeah.
6 to 10 reps or
6 to 10 reps.
sets, would you say?
Like 2 to 4 sets. And then I would say like once or twice a year, we focus on basically RDLing really heavy, or during eccentrically overloaded cycles, we'll hit Nordic hamstring curls really intensely, like lower as slowly as possible, and go to like RPE like 9 basically. Sometimes, actually no, this last cycle we did an isometric cycle where it was hard, 100% effort each rep. So yeah, I would say like 2 to 3 months out of the year we're training them hard. The rest of the time it's essentially getting volume in.
I agree with that. I can't really refute that at all.
You can't refute that?
No.
So what I would also say is the reason that I don't often load it more in jumpers is because of back issues. You could do more lying hamstring curl and stuff, and it would probably be fine because they're not sprinting as often. Now, if I have an athlete that's sprinting more, I'm
usually tired as hell by the end of the workout.
Yep. And I usually do put it at the end because it's an accessory exercise. It's not a main key movement that I would train. I think the reason it's so popular is because it challenges the assumption that it isn't important. The reason it's popular is because saying it's important challenges the common assumption that it's not. The common assumption is correct. It's not that important. Like, it's just that if you say it is and you should do it and that's why you have knee issues because you're not doing it and that's why you have knee issues. That's just, in reality, that's not true. It sells well.
Even with this, we're clickbaiting. We're clickbaiting with it. The
clickbaiting.
thumbnail is probably gonna be like, "Is this muscle the secret of jumping higher?" And
you can make
now
it
you're finding out the answer.
The one picture where your hamstring looks like
yeah, I'll reuse that.
Yeah, that was a good thumbnail. Yeah. All right, I feel like we've covered this pretty thoroughly. You agree with that? Anything you guys would like to add?
No.
All right, that said, go to THPstrength.com and sign up for coaching. If you're watching this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're a bitch, don't sign up for coaching. Don't waste my time. Don't waste your time. We want people that are obsessed with getting better and reaching their genetic potential.
We hate one and dones.
I put so much effort emotionally into your training that if you don't care, it just kills me inside.
It breaks our hearts.
It breaks my soul.
Legitimately, yeah.
I have attachment and abandonment issues, so when I get to know you the first month and then you leave, it really upsets me.
I also have abandonment issues.
I don't, but it still
should.
sucks.
All right, see you guys.